Robert's getting ready to work Dan. Dan is a new walking horse that just came in. Story behind him is he came from the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, a 3-year-old walking horse, and has had a few rides. It sounds like maybe 6 or 8 rides. And the owner, I think had a knee replacement or something. I don't remember exactly, but can't ride for a few weeks. So they sent Dan and another horse down for us to continue with Dan's training and to ride the other horse. And this is the first time that we've saddled or really done a lot with Dan other than turn him out. I did post a video on Patreon of us catching him after he was turned out for a few hours. He was pretty hard to catch, so that's something else that is going to have to be addressed. We don't typically start from the beginning with groundwork when a new horse comes in. I feel like if we do that, if we back up and redo work that's already been done, that's kind of a waste of the owner's money and our time. So what we do, we start with where the horse is supposed to be, and then watch for any holes that we would need to address. So we'd do saddling Dan in the covered arena like we do all green horses. Robert brushed him, now putting the bridle on him. It's putting the bridle on him about how I would expect for a 3-year-old that's had a few rides. Not terrible, but it needs improvement. And so far, everything that the horse is doing matches what the owner told us. There, Robert's just doing the little things like touched him with the pad, shaking the pad, just looking for any holes that we might need to stop and address. And we're going to just continue on until we find a hole that needs to be worked on, and that's what we'll do. We're going to, when we're doing this process, we bridle first out here, which you just saw that helps the process go quicker by putting the bridle on first. And we generally handle him like he's a broke horse, but watch for those holes like I talked about. You saw Robert shaking the saddle, and just a few things just to make sure that the horse is aware of those things, and we can tell whether those things have been worked or not, or if they're a problem. See there, he rubbed his belly before he brought the girth under, and by doing those little things like that, that lets us know that there's a problem before there's a big reaction showing there's a problem. So if Robert run his hands under his belly and the horse would have spooked from the touch, then we would have known that that was a problem. That was a hole that we would need to back up and address. But since we got the reaction that we would expect, he kept on going. Now right there, as Robert's going to tighten the saddle, Dan's walking forward. Not really bowing his back like he wants to buck, not doing anything too terribly bad other than like he just don't know to stand still. So that's something that we will have to work on. That's probably going to get better on its own with just more saddling. We'll spend a little bit of time working with it, but as Dan gets used to being saddled, that's going to get better just on its own. Robert's just showing him that that's not acceptable. Bumping the halter. Robert put the bridle on. It's just a plain ring snaffle bridle, nothing special. Put that on over the rope halter, and everything that we'll be doing with Dan today will be off of the halter. There, just walking him around, just seeing how he accepts the saddle. Looking for his back bowed up, looking for a stiff walk, ears back on the saddle like it's not, like you're unsure. But see how Dan's just looking around, not concerned about the saddle, more concerned about looking around and seeing what's around him. That tells Robert that it's okay to keep going. That the saddle is not a hole that we would need to go back and spend any time on. And now he's clipping the reins on. And tighten the saddle to get on after he walked a few steps. We're never going to tighten it all the way the first time when you first tighten the saddle. And then again, walking him a little bit, seeing how he reacts from that, how he reacts from tightening the saddle. He walked off like it's been done before, like he wasn't worried about it. So Robert's going to keep on going. He's going to put his foot in the stirrup and just watch him and see how he behaves. When he gets to a point where he looks like he's worried, then Robert would stop and back up and work that hole. Now Robert step up there, swung his leg over and sat down. Now the first thing, like we've talked about before, we always walk circles first. So he's trying to get him to walk forward into a circle. Don't have too much forward. He's got some steering. The horse is bending its head, so that's good. Just need to work on some forward. Now watch Robert's legs. He'll kick on Dan to get him to go forward, and then when Dan does go forward, he gets quiet with his legs. And then get quiet. Robert's going to keep a little bit of contact with one rein. That's going to keep Robert safe, and that's going to help keep Dan's attention back on Robert. There, asking for forward again. Going to keep kicking and then get quiet when he moves. He'll start quiet, kicking soft, and then just keep building until Dan walks off. When Dan walks off, he gets quiet with his legs. Same thing again, just basic reinforcing until Dan gets more solid and figures that out. There we go, then get quiet. Now Robert's starting to go off a little bit bigger area. He's telling, he can feel that Dan feels good, that he doesn't seem to be worried with a rider on him. If Dan had his back bowed up like he wanted to buck or act like he was worried about any part of it, Robert would have kept him in a smaller area. This is why we rarely start horses in a round pen. We always start them in here. And it has a lot of advantages. If you're not comfortable starting horses, it has some disadvantages because you can get yourself in trouble pretty quick. But when you start a lot of horses, you actually can get more done quicker when you're in this little bit bigger area. We don't do a lot of lunging like a lot of people do that start horses. We don't want to wear the horse down physically before we get on. We want the horse to be ready mentally. We do things to get the horse mentally prepared, and we rarely have too much trouble. Now really at this point, all Robert's working on is go and a little bit of steering. Nothing too complicated, just go and steer a little bit. Right there, see he's needing to work on a steering some. That will come. The owner, I believe she started Dan herself, and looks like she's done a really good job. We haven't found any holes yet that we needed to go back and spend much time working on. He is hard to catch, which if you follow on Patreon, I posted that video on Patreon of us working on catching him, and that's going to fix itself with just more saddle time. After this ride, we did put Dan on the patience line, so he stood tied for a pretty good while on that line after this ride. He kind of scooted forward just a little bit. Robert just took a hold of the left side of his face. All the little bit of chewing on the bit that Dan's doing, that is just from not being familiar with the bit. That's going to go away on its own too. So typically what we do is we'll get a couple of rides in here, make sure we have some steering and a little bit of speed control, and then take them out in the back pasture. And it probably won't be but just a couple of rides, and we'll have him out back there. What the owner told me was that they were taking him, there you see Robert kicking to get him going and then getting soft. What the owner had told me, the way she started him, she ponied him out with another horse on trail riding, and then when he seemed like he was ready, she swapped and got on Dan and then rode him back on the trail riding. So Dan has been out before, and I have started horses that way before, and that is a really good way to do it. It keeps the horse's mind on forward, and like in a round pen or even this arena to some extent, there's only so much for the horse to look at, so the horse can get kind of over fixated on the rider and worry more about the rider. Where when you start them out trail riding like what she did, it can go really good because the horse is looking at other things out in the woods and a little bit more relying on you for direction. And for that to work, you need to spend a little bit of time doing a little bit of groundwork so that the horse trusts you. And but that's a good way to do it. But not everybody needs to do it that way if they're not comfortable getting on a horse that's never been ridden out in the woods. So it can be risky too. A lot of people that watch these clinicians start these horses in round pens, and they have it in their mind that that's the only way to do it and how they all should be done. And that is so far from the truth. These working horses, a lot of times they need a job. You actually do better starting them out on a job. And walking horses are their main thing that they're known for is trail riding out in the woods. And starting him like that, I think, was a really good idea. If you've ever used some kind of odd way to start a horse like that, or a different way other than in a round pen, put it in the comments. Let me know how you've started horses before. I know I've heard of people taking them into a pond and starting them in a pond, and I don't think that's done as much anymore, but I've heard of that before. So if you're not a member of Patreon and you want to go look at that video of us working on catching Dan, it's Tim Anderson Horse Training on Patreon. And I've got 3 different membership tiers that get you 3 different privileges. One of them is to access to all of those training videos. And the higher tier actually has access to the training videos and a free video lesson a month. So you might want to check that out. This whole ride with Dan was roughly 30 minutes, just under 30 minutes. And it's just a matter of getting him out, getting moving, and there's getting into a nice running walk. That's a nice minded horse. The work that's been done with him before we got him was good work, really good. We don't have to go back and redo anything. We just have to keep going forward. He did come in with an older horse, and the two do seem pretty buddy sour. We're gonna have to work on that, and really the older horse seems to have more of a buddy sour issue than Dan here. Dan is 3. I don't remember how old the other one is. I want to say 8, but I could be wrong. The other one's name is Dennis, and we'll have a video of him out soon too. So if you've got any questions about anything we've done here, put it in the comments and we'll address it. A lot of these horses, we do work a little different than a lot of people, and that's because our program is geared towards performance horses. And a lot of the performance horses that we work with, they're kind of spooked at the sun, it looks like, don't do good just lunging around and around and around penning. And if you are having an issue getting your horse started, or an issue working with your horse or riding your horse, put it in the comments, or send me a message, and we can talk about sending it to me for training and see if we can get you some help. So this gives you a pretty good idea of Dan and where he's at and what we're doing with him. We'll get some more rides on him and get him out and have some more videos of him so you can see how he progresses. Until next time, thank you for watching.